Hi class, this is Mrs. Lyons. This is going to be a short video. It will be our introduction to stoichiometry, and what we're going to talk about is mole ratios. So mole ratios, a ratio is the comparison of one thing to another thing, and we're going to see how that works in chemical equations. So for example, I have this reaction. So we would react hydrogen gas plus oxygen gas to form water. All right, one thing that we have to kind of go backwards and remember from a couple of units ago is balancing. So we would need to put some coefficients in here to make this equation balanced. So if you look, we start out, there's 2 hydrogen on the left and 2 hydrogen on the right, but there are 2 oxygen on the left and only 1 on the right. So what we would do is we would put a coefficient of 2 in front of water. So now that gives us 2 oxygen in the products as well as 2 oxygen in the reactants. However, we have 4 hydrogen now. So that means that we need 4 hydrogen on our reactant side. So if we put a 2 here, that is going to give us a balanced chemical equation. Okay, so mole ratios are very simply the ratio of hydrogen to oxygen. So what this equation tells us is it takes 2 moles of hydrogen to react with 1 mole of oxygen, and as a result, we form 2 moles of water. All right, so if I asked you for the ratio of hydrogen to oxygen, you would just look at the coefficients and you would say that the ratio is 2 to 1. All right. Now, if you hear that clanking in the background, that is Raider running around making a lot of noise. Just ignore him. All right. This equation I give you in words. So before we can do anything else with it, I want us to get back into the practice of writing chemical equations. So if this says sodium reacts with chlorine to form sodium chloride, I'm going to write an equation. All right, so sodium, remember sodium is not S, sodium is Na. It's a metal, so it would be a solid. Reacts with chlorine, so chlorine is Cl. Remember also that chlorine is one of the 7 diatomic elements, Hobberfinkel. So chlorine gets a 2. If you look on your periodic table, chlorine is a gas at room temperature. And then our product that we're going to form is sodium chloride. So remember, we have to always, anytime we're making a compound, we have to look at the charges. So if I look at my periodic table and I find sodium and I find chlorine, sodium is a +1 ion, chlorine forms a -1 ion. So since those are the same, they cancel out, and our formula for sodium chloride is just NaCl. And we know that that's a solid at room temperature because it's an ionic compound. Okay, now we need to balance this. All right, so if you notice, we've got 1 sodium on each side. However, we have 2 chlorines in our reactants and only 1 in our product, which tells me I need to put a 2 here. But now that gives me 2 sodium as well, so I'm going to put a 2 over here. All right, so I'm going to flip to the next slide. Hopefully you're taking notes and you have written this down. So we have 2 sodium plus 1 chlorine reacts to give us 2 sodium chlorides. So I want to know the mole ratio of sodium to chlorine. I'm going to jump back here. So sodium is 2, chlorine is 1. All right, so you're very simply, what you're doing is you're looking at this balanced chemical equation and you're looking at the coefficients. All right, so if I hop over here and I say, what is the mole ratio of chlorine to sodium chloride? Whoops, I'm going to go back one more. So I'm looking at chlorine. Chlorine's 1, sodium chloride is 2. So the mole ratio would be 1 to 2. All right, so that is actually pretty easy to think about. one other thing I want us to kind of start thinking about is I want us to start visualizing these reactions. Okay, so for example, we just used the example, we have sodium and we had chlorine gas, Cl2, and we formed sodium chloride. All right, I want us to visualize this with, and I'm gonna do shapes, or I'm gonna do different colored balls to represent what's going on and to show how we can represent this visually. All right, so I'm gonna make sodium. Sodium's gonna be, I'm gonna make it a purple circle, and I'm gonna make chlorine. Whoops. I'm gonna make chlorine a orange circle, so Cl2 is going to be two chlorines connected to each other. Whoops. All right. Now let's change that. I'm going to make chlorine two open circles. All right. So I've got one sodium, two chlorines. So when I go over to this side, I have one chlorine and one sodium. All right. So now what we've got to do, when we balance, we know this, we have to show the same number of atoms of each element on each side. So over here I've got two orange chlorines bonded together, so I need another chlorine over here. The only way that I can get that other chlorine, remember this from our balancing unit, the only way I can get that is to add the entire sodium chloride. So now I have two chlorines, and I also have two sodiums, so now I need to go back over here and add another sodium. Okay, so I kind of want us to get used to visualizing these this way, because as we go on in the process, this will be very helpful for us. So anyway, quick video just to kind of get us going into stoichiometry. This is Mrs. Lyons signing off. I will see you in class.